And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 121. That is Connor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. It has been it's been an interesting week with the Bruins, just given obviously on the ice. The last two episodes have been very off the ice stuff, so this episode is going to be more on the ice focus. Because again, for the second straight week, we waited until Friday to record. So I'll probably put this out Friday night. You can get it the weekend, next week. Listen to it when you want. Listen to it a year from now. We don't care. But we wanted to wait because there was a chance that Charlie McAvoy might return for the game on Thursday. And wouldn't you guess, the Bruins pulled another fast one. Those tricksters. Here came Charlie McAvoy back on Thursday. Were you surprised by that, by the way, that he came back when he did?
Not really. After the Martian thing where it was literally like completely mapped out, dude was skating on the top line in practice, like was getting hugs during the post-practice stretch. And Montgomery was like, yeah, like 7 to 10 days. And then the next day, literally, he was back out there. After that happened, you can't pull that like again and not think that we're going to like already have like our stories written the next day. Like, yeah, he's back. It was mapped out the exact same way. And sure enough, on the ice, almost the exact same result, which just shows how this team is rolling right now, that as soon as he gets activated, McAvoy, I think all of us were like, and probably when we were talking about recording on Friday, like he's probably going to come back. He's probably going to like score a goal, or he's going to have like 3 assists or 5 hits, 24 minutes or something like that. He was going to have a great debut. And sure enough, there it is.
Scores the game winner. And that was the thing. And also had a good game aside from that.
Yeah.
Good on D, like looked good. But I go back to this goal. Remember, was it 1920 when he just could not score a goal? Was that the year that he genuinely could not score and he finally got the OT winner in Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
That was
February.
Yes, it was very late in the year. It's funny, ever since he has been on a tear, not maybe, goal scoring wise, but as a defender, like he has been outstanding ever since that happened. But again, I think I don't think this is a hot take to say it's very encouraging that he came back, scored the game winner. I tweeted, he's going to have 3 goals. He's going to invent a new post-game ritual. He's going to, single-handedly save the city in one night. And, he didn't quite score 3 goals. He was no Erik Karlsson, but he was close, a goal. On the ice, what did you think of him aside from the goal, and what did you think of his play?
Yeah, I think he was as advertised, and I think it's one thing where I think when we look back at this season and the team MVPs and the people who have really stepped up, I think you got to give Scott Waugh and their PT staff at the Bruins a lot of credit for what they've done for all these guys. These are all guys in, Grzelcyk, Marchand, McAvoy. They're all coming back from. It's not like a knee scope or anything like that, or healing a broken bone or something where you cast it up. It's usually pretty good, like you're ready to roll. Whether it be major shoulder surgery, McAvoy's was even more severe than Grzelcyk, where he even said, it's a very complex surgery. There's no set timeline or kind of, boxes you need to check in terms of getting back. It kind of lets it heal on its own. You kind of work with what your body gives you. Then obviously Marchand was one where we kind of talked about before the season started in terms of double hip surgery on a guy who's 34. Marchand, if there's ever got to, come back from that, it's Marchand, but you got to put that little, you got to temper a little bit of those expectations in terms of what players you're getting, and whether it's Marchand coming back with a 3-point night or McAvoy playing like he did on Thursday. I mean, yeah, he gets the goal, but looked like vintage McAvoy, right, in terms of how he impacts the game. And he maybe isn't, we always talk about, he's not the bombastic guy like a Cale Makar or something like that, but in terms of how good he is in every facet of his game, whether it's transition, obviously shutting down opponents in the D zone, his added confidence on offense, and it's something that I think should continue to build. Even though he got a lot of reps on the PK, didn't get that much on the power play in this one. They roll with their 5 forward power play for a lot in this game against the Flames. So I think McAvoy only ended up with like 19 minutes of ice time, which is an outlier for him. But something that I think we're also probably talking about this episode is it's one thing where sure they want to ease him in, but it also helps when the defense is also playing so great around him. You've got Lindholm, who's been a monster, and a guy that we'll talk to about in Connor Clifton, who I think has also been a game changer for this team. But in terms of just what McAvoy brings to this team night in, night out, how he impacts in every single area of the ice, it makes a very good team that much better, and especially a defense that I think has really exceeded expectations in terms of how they've played without so many key players in the lineup. You can't understate what him out there for 22 minutes a night in and night out, can bring to this team moving forward.
And again, there's no pressure. I mean, again, you're not. Remember, throughout the offseason, we said, when Marchand and McAvoy come back, they're going to be desperate. They're going to feel desperately needed. They're going to hopefully tread water until they're back. They're back. The team is back. I mean, I know there's Forbert who's still injured and Swayman's injured and guys like that. But the guys that, in the offseason who we worried about are back now. And 12-2-0 or 11-2-0, some treading water. But again, I think it goes back to there was no rush to bring him back. And even 19 minutes last night, or on Thursday, you didn't have to force him out there. He didn't have to play half the game, your defense is playing well. You have the 5 forward unit on the power play. You're not rushing him back. Again, this weekend, right? He's playing only one of the 2 games. Has Montgomery confirmed which game it's going to be yet?
So they're going to check to see how he felt on Friday. Friday's an off day for the Bruins. We probably won't get an actual word until probably Saturday at morning skate in Buffalo. But again, who knows? The way the luck has been going with this team, maybe he does play both if he feels okay. But if not, we'll see kind of what the move is. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they bring him back have him give a night off up in Buffalo and then maybe see how he is in Vancouver and go from there. But we'll see. Again, it wouldn't also put him past him that he feels good to go and plays fine. Both games.
An interesting thing, though, is, again, the season's a little over a month in. And one thing we talked about, last year, McAvoy finishes 5th in the Norris. And coming into this year, again, it's a crowded field. Yossi, Hedman, Makar, Fox, Erik Karlsson coming out of Rasmus Dahlin. Throw Hampus Lindholm in there. But, he's missed a month. Let's say McAvoy has an outstanding, from here on out through the rest of the season. I don't know what the point number you want to put it as, but is there a chance? I think he'll be in probably the top 10, I would imagine. But how much does that month off hurt his Norris chances?
I mean, I think it will probably, as it usually does when it comes to setting aside maybe the top 3 candidates, a lot of it will probably end up on point total and how quickly he can pick up the pace. Is he going to be a guy that finishes with 65 games played and 59 points or something like that? Then, maybe he's in that same, tier with a guy like Makar or Fox, who, if they stay healthy, are probably going to put up 80-ish points again, right? It's tough to kind of compete against that in terms of the wider scope, in terms of how they assess these Norris Trophy candidates. Also probably hurts them in the fact that the Bruins have been a complete wagon. Without him in the lineup. So I guarantee you, when it gets down to early April, when we start looking at potential, award winners and how much guys impact, it's the same thing you have with a situation with the Hart Trophy, right? Where sometimes it's all right, Connor McDavid's always the best, but when people were vouching in, I think it was 2019-20 for Panarin, his first year, he doesn't have the same numbers, but who's more valuable to their team? You have that argument too. That could end up not working out in McAvoy's favor, considering how good they've been. But beyond kind of all those other narratives, I have to imagine if McAvoy's healthy and playing at a high level, he's going to be right there. He's a guy that the eye test works in terms of how he impacts every area of the game is what gives him, I think, a leg up over maybe some other players. And barring something catastrophic going on, he's going to be another analytics darling. So the graphs are going to look good. The play on the ice is going to look good. So he'll be right in the mix. It's just, is he going to have enough to maybe, eke out a guy like a Makar or Fox or even Karlsson this year, which, again, you want to talk about a narrative. It'd be a feel-good story if Karlsson just goes and wins it, even though that Sharks team, but that's a very bad team.
Stinks. Bad. Obviously, to some, this 12-2-0 start has surprised people with the Bruins, right? It's, and even us, we had high hopes for them and high expectations, but even 12-2-0 is kind of damn, this is a little more than we expected. But someone who's been a surprise to everybody, maybe the biggest surprise. I mean, there's been a lot of big, bright surprises, but I mean, one of the biggest, Connor Clifton, and good to see him get rewarded on Thursday, follows his rebound, scores a goal, perfect Cliffy hockey type of goal too. Gets the shot off, just says,
chaotic.
Hell with it. I'm going straight in and scoring, and good for him. But It hasn't been chaotic this year. And I think he's an interest because over the offseason, remember how much we talked about like Montgomery's new system, holding on to the puck a little bit more, not rushing up, but defenders getting involved with the offense. So we looked at a guy like Carlo and said, maybe that'll benefit him. And I guess it has, it hasn't been super noticeable. I mean, he was injured for a bit, but the guy who it may have impacted the most is Clifton. Because again, like just on a night in, night out basis, this guy is as consistent, I think, as we've ever seen him.
Yeah, I think that's the big key, right? Is consistency. We knew what kind of player Clifton is in terms of, being willing to take a little bit of risk and activate off the blue line of lineup guys for big hits, all that stuff. What is, I think, probably hindered him from being a everyday guy beyond maybe just a third pairing role or as the seventh D has been that consistency. And usually it's that aggressiveness or risk taking that sometimes can blow up in your face, which happens when you play a game at the level of the NHL, right? Where you take a risk all of a sudden, you got a counter rush going the other way. But for as much as I think, Montgomery is, encouraging him to not play with risk, but to take those chances when they're there, he's limiting, the amount of times where he's getting, caught flat footed or leading to an odd man rush or anything like that. And results are playing out there on the ice. I mean, this is a guy that if you told me going into the year, like McAvoy will be back, I think we'd all be like, all right, well, he's probably going to be with Lindholm, right? Like they were good last year. And, who's really the second guy on the right side after that? Like I imagine Carlo, but, do you want to put Lindholm and Carlo together when that good last year? And Clifton's playing so well that now you're in a spot where Montgomery and the Bruins have the luxury of splitting up McAvoy and Lindholm, because right now, Lindholm and Clifton against, I think what any of us predicted, it looks like a legit shutdown line. I mean, it's one of those things where it's not just a small little sample size now where it's all right, 2-3 games together. Like, they scored a goal, not a lot of chances the other way. They've been together for, I think it's 74 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time, Lindholm and Clifton. And the Bruins have outscored opponents 5-0. Pretty good.
Yeah. I think I saw Scott McLaughlin tweet those stats out before the game yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
So it's and it's one thing where it feels like it's almost like the way they play complements one another, right? Like Clifton's the aggressive kind of risk-taking guy, and Lindholm's the guy that's kind of poised, always makes the right play. So when they're both kind of playing to each other's strengths, that it makes a good. It's kind of like Krug and Carlo back in the day, right? In terms of how they complemented one another. And it could be a game changer. I mean, we all talk about this team and, the fact that we expected them to be deeper up front, especially, but on defense, kind of see where the pieces were going to fall into place, especially when McAvoy and Grzelcyk were out. We could have a spot now where if Clifton keeps up this level of play, your third D pairing is Forbort and Carlo, which pretty good. And it's down. Like that. If Carlo, who, again, I know some people are maybe not thrilled with how his career has kind of gone through its up and down, which I think also a lot of it has to do with, unfortunately, injuries and stuff like that. But I still think he brings you value. Like I think even this past game against the Flames, where they go 0-for-6 on the penalty on the power play, those are the games where Carlo, his strengths really kind of come out and he can impact the game. If he's your third pairing guy, pretty good. You got a pretty good defense if that's the case. And a lot of the credit has to go to a guy like Clifton, who, again, we knew McAvoy, when he's back, he was going to be really good. Probably didn't know Lindholm was going to be this good, but he's a very good player. Grzelcyk back healthy will help. But to have a guy like, Forbort and especially Clifton kind of take a big step forward for them, that's really kind of lifted the whole rest of the defensive unit as a whole.
I mean, I remember watching Clifton in the 2019 playoffs and being like, oh my God, like this guy came out of nowhere and he's a legitimate defenseman. Like he's, you didn't expect him to kind of blossom, and he did. And then over the past couple of years, it's been the consistency, as I said, like that's been what's hurt him. And I think with even a guy like Cassidy, I think that was one of the younger players who had to kind of restrain himself a bit, from being Cliffy hockey. And sometimes it worked out great and it was fun, but sometimes he'd be caught up ice. And I think, again, I mean, it just seems to be working. And again, maybe it's him getting older, a little more mature, but I think it's also the system that Montgomery's implemented, where he's been a little bit more successful. So again, it's early. It's still early, but we're also not in the beginning of the season anymore. It's like, transitioning to like that beginning middle part of the season. Like it's not the first couple weeks still. Like this is getting into the season. They're legitimately good. So why not do a little early MVP? Little early MVP through 14 games. which again is a considerable amount of time. That's not a tiny sample size. Who has been your MVP?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when your team's 12-2-0, you've got a lot of very deserving candidates, but I'm going to go with I think I'm going to have to go with Olmark in terms of just the bottom line. Generally, it's the most important position in hockey and arguably one of them right up there in sports in terms of how much they can impact the game. And whether it be them winning a lot of shootouts early on, ugly kind of 5-3, 5-4 games, or now you're seeing it where the offense isn't drying up, but it's regressing a little bit back to the mean as to what we expected, and he's winning 3-1 games or 1-goal games, stuff like that. He's been huge for this team. I think people expected maybe a bit of a better performance from him after last year, just building off of last year. Not to say that he was bad or anything last year, but take another step forward. But he's looked like a Vezina candidate right now, and it's one of those things where, especially early on when this team was trying to find its footing, you still have guys that are injured. You have a new system in place. First couple of games, defense pretty wonky, right? Like the structure was, had
the
some
7-goal game in Ottawa.
There's nothing I think that's tougher in terms of starting off a season than winning or maybe losing a game like 6-5 or something like that. We're like, all right, your offense is going, but it's not the game you want to be playing. There's goals you want back. There's defensive lapses that you definitely want back. So for him, I think really early on, especially to kind of weather that storm, keep them in these games where the defense was trying to get its footing down, I think was huge in terms of building that momentum for this team. So I'll go with Olmark right now. Again, we'll see if he can keep it up, but I keep on saying that. He's started 6 games in a row now. He doesn't look like he's slowing up anytime soon. I mean, he just looks so poised back there. The way he's tracking the puck, not really giving up rebounds. It's just, whether it's just the comfort factor of being here another season or what, he just looks like a completely different player from last year. And he's been, I think, the most important reason why they're piling on points in a hurry to start the season.
I could not agree more. I think the only hesitation I have is we've become accustomed in the past couple of years to, as the league has changed with goalies, to say, hey, don't overload them in the regular season. I don't think they want a situation in which, the playoffs roll around and he's played 50 something games and you're kind of, upper 50s and you're like, oh shoot, this guy is, might be a little tired, a little worn down. That's my only thing. That's my only thing with Olmark. And that's not him. That's on the coaches. But again, Swayman's also injured right now. So that's another important key part of that, where they are missing Jeremy Swayman. And I think when he comes back, you'll see him get a little bit more of the work. But yeah, I mean, outstanding this year. Outstanding. And again, goes back to, even after that Pittsburgh game when he got pulled, came back in after Swayman gets injured, and he's been lights out ever since. Typically he was lights out up until that point. Rough game. You'd think, oh, maybe he'll start to regress. Didn't happen at all. So things have worked there. My MVP, for sake of being a little bit different, but I also think he has genuinely been an MVP, Hampus Lindholm. Hampus Lindholm, I mean, again, we talked about this all offseason on D, where, he's going to have to step up and assume the number one role. And he didn't just assume it. I think he became a legitimate number one defenseman in the NHL. Obviously, McAvoy is top dog on D. I don't think anyone disputes that. But Lindholm is also a number one defenseman, a number one caliber defenseman. I mean, again, 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 games. Fascinating stat. I know this is not a pro plus minus podcast, but we use it when it helps our arguments and cases. Andrew Raycroft tweeted, in 28 games in Lindholm's Bruins career, he has yet to be a minus. And I think it goes back to, as you alluded to earlier, he always makes the right play. And it's never, he's not like this gaudy player who makes these incredible, spinorama pass. It's just smart plays. And it goes to show, smart plays win games. And I think that's a guy who, again, he's a calculated risk taker, and he gets shots through from the point. And I mean, again, it wasn't just him on the back end throughout the time without McAvoy and even Grzelcyk, but he was the key piece to that. And points wise, play, eye test, whatever, they have something there. And I think that was one thing I remember back when they traded for him. We kind of said, okay, that's what they needed, but he was regressing a bit in Anaheim. That was one of the worries, was he wasn't, his career didn't seem to be going up. It seemed to be kind of slowly. And that is also the Anaheim effect. And we both said that at the time, Anaheim is not this defensive stalwart. but it's completely shifted now. It's completely shifted. Top 5 in the league in points. Plays with confidence. Seems to be fitting in. Like, just to me, MVP early on, and again, worth giving up the first round pick for so far, because that's he filled a huge need on this team. They needed a top 4 left shot defenseman. They got a top 4 left shot defenseman. I don't know how you can have any problem with that. So those are the big MVPs. I guess unsung here. I mean, I don't know if he's been unsung because we have eaten crow on this person many times, but like Nick Foligno, I wouldn't say it's like MVP, but very important.
Seventh player award.
Oh, like not even close.
Yeah, yes. Or forward. Like, or Clifton.
Another.
There's a whole bunch of them.
It's gonna be like everyone's talking about the midterm elections. I think the election for 7th player come the end of the year, I think that's gonna be the one that's gonna get people the most divided.
Forbert's just gonna do like a stump speech with like Dala, and it's gonna be over. It's gonna be like the new Czech.
He's gonna win.
It's gonna be the new Czech's speech, but it's gonna have Dala right there, so everyone's done for.
You can't do anything about that. Who's the guy from MSNBC with the khakis who does the board?
Steve Kornacki.
Steve Kornacki. Let Steve Kornacki do the 7th player. This district, the Middlesex County is really going for Clifton, but Essex is really going Forbert, and we got the Boston area going for Foligno, and yeah, it's just it's a real split state here. But yeah, I mean, again, like, there have been no shortage of guys. There hasn't been many disappointments. Like Craig Smith hasn't really found his footing. I know he's injured right now. That's one guy, but things have worked. And again, like, you look at the upcoming schedule, not to be that guy, but Saturday at Buffalo, Sunday against Vancouver, Thursday against Philadelphia, Saturday against the Blackhawks. Like, I don't know. That should be a couple of wins right there. I mean, who knows? It's hockey. And I also looked like the top 4 teams in each, the top team in each division: Boston, New Jersey, Vegas, Winnipeg, just like we all expected.
Yes,
so,
of course.
Fun start to the year. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at BSJ?
Yeah. Again, with every day, every game, we'll have continued coverage of everything regarding the Bruins over at BSJ, whether it's game reports, columns, features, Q&As, all that good stuff. So you can find all that over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So please subscribe over there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at ConnorRyan_93.
Go do all that. Connor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.